The body of this man is so large that just one step makes the earth tremble. They didn't believe in earthquakes, but when young Hyun walked, it seemed like the world was ending. Everyone was completely shocked. He was so heavy that his weight exceeded several hundred kilograms already. He dreamed of becoming the supreme leader of martial arts, but even a mosquito landing on his neck was enough to make him stagger and fall. The fall of his gigantic body could be heard from the other side of the country. Is he the one causing the earthquakes in my house? His body was torn and unusable, but he knew that at some point, someone would appear and destroy the entire Murim. That man was truly incredible and was able to unify the entire Murim. His parents also died in the chaos he caused. Therefore, someone as ordinary and weak as him was accepted as a disciple by 6 masters of the main sects, undergoing infernal training where living was worse than death. They tried to pierce him alive. They tried to freeze him alive. They tried fire. This strengthened his body. And all of this was his master's plan for him to become very powerful. And then he was sent back in time to change the fate of the world. But he never imagined that he would end up in Hyun's fat, useless body, unable to practice martial arts. Back in the present, he was being treated by Jang Seung, while Hyun was thinking about how to defeat the ungrateful servant of the sect who would cause all the chaos. He remembered that he first needed to obtain the virgin ginseng before the ungrateful servant, the doctor, and the one responsible for Hyun's care kept arguing about his health. And he couldn't think straight until he finally remembered that the servant would get the virgin ginseng in 6 months. He needed to do something right now. He immediately got up, telling his father that he needed to walk. His father immediately called people to bring a big chair, the biggest available. The people carrying the chair needed to be the strongest, but he refused because he wanted to walk alone. Still, his father immediately called the guards to help him, showing a scene that made the old man's eyes moist. He hadn't walked alone since he was 10 years old. In the following days, he trained very hard, walking around the courtyards for a month, but this ton-heavy body still showed no sign of change. He even got on the scale to check, but not even a whole herd of pigs climbing made Hyun budge a bit. The rope on the pig's side even broke. While Hyun tried to remember the name of the servant who would bring chaos, his vassal was trying to console him, saying that losing weight wasn't something that could be done overnight. It was necessary to focus on the diet, reducing sugar intake and increasing protein, and then do exercises to strengthen the muscles. The situation of the young master could take a long time to stabilize, but Hyun didn't care. He just wanted to remember the name of that ungrateful servant. It seems that Hyun lost his memories about the servant when he reincarnated, but anyway, he will appear in Anhui province to look for the virgin ginseng. Maybe he could find him during this opportunity. Thinking about the scene where he would press him there with his invincible strength, he was laughing completely satisfied, imagining that after dealing with him, he would have a quiet life. What a dream! His vassal thinks he must have gone mad as a side effect of losing weight too fast. He was shocked by the sudden change and ran off to call the doctor. He immediately brought the old Jang running to him, Jang Seung, who at 30 entered the selection exam to be the emperor's personal physician. He went through a series of excellent tests to become a doctor at the same time. At 50, he attained enlightenment and developed his own medical technique. This was his savior and the key to making him beautiful with an athletic body. He asked if he could prepare various types of weight loss remedies quickly. The very happy man says that this would indeed be possible. So Hyun asks if it can be done in 6 months, but it would take 3 years for that, and he would have to exercise. Hyun killed a mosquito on his doctor's neck while calling him a charlatan. However, the doctor thought of a method to help him lose weight quickly. If he couldn't walk on land, he should walk underwater. Eventually, he arrived at a nearby stream. The men, after carrying him all the way, were dead tired. Hyun slowly bent down to enter the water. He thought that walking underwater would relax his body. The pressure on his bones and muscles would be relieved. Suddenly, he slipped and fell into the deep water. It seemed like he would float thanks to his big balloon belly. But suddenly he sank like a submarine, and his vassal still hadn't reacted, thinking he was happily swimming. But little did his vassal know that he was now an oxygenless submarine. The vassal thought he had the potential to become a professional swimmer, until another vassal warned that this river might have a steeper decline than expected, and he might be sinking like a submarine. The vassal looked at the water without understanding, but now he realized that his master was drowning. He panicked and ran to save him, but basically, an ordinary person like them couldn't carry Hyun's giant body to the shore. Meanwhile, young Hyun began to lose his strength. Memories of this body at 2 years old clearly surfaced in his head. He had to go through terrible things. His mother died protecting him. At that moment, A girl pulled him to the shore, saving his life.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you.
So they finally returned to their home. The vassal at that moment was facing Hyun's father's wrath, but after finding out that everything was caused by the doctor, the man, after almost going to the afterlife at the hands of Hyun's father, explains that the young man was sad after being rejected and decided to lose weight. Then he mentioned the underwater weight loss method, which was very effective, but Hyun's sister, the woman who sent her maid to save him at the waterfall, says that it was not necessary to go so deep into the waterfall to lose weight. Now in Hyun's room, he woke up again, seeing his beautiful older sister. He could not even believe that that beautiful maiden was his sister. Clearly, he was fat and stupid, but he had such a beautiful sister, an exceptional beauty. His sister's maid asked if she could help him up. Hyun thinks it would be impossible for her to do it alone, but she easily lifted him up, saying it's a piece of cake for her. The next day, he was taken to the location where the weight loss program was, but the subordinates were very happy. Clearly it was strange for everyone to be happy to carry someone with the weight of a mammoth. Arriving at the site, everyone was building a 5-star kiddie pool for him. This was clearly the idea of the older sister. He no longer needed to go to the dangerous stream. But Hyun finds this very strange. But upon seeing his pool completely ready, Hyun becomes very happy. The people who saw him walking to the pool also seemed happy and congratulated him for it. They clearly had sweated a lot just because of such a meaningless thing. So how could this be fun? He also asked his vassal who was arriving now about his adoptive father, the head of the family. The impressive thing is that in the vassal's view, the old bodybuilder looks charming to his eyes. So the man says that the patriarch is the great apprentice whom all apprentices admire. This made him a symbol of purity and integrity. But in Hyun's view, his father was just an old lecher. The vassal says that whenever there was hunger, he opened his warehouse and took care of everyone's livelihood by sharing food and clothes. Everyone in the town respected him. Hyun immediately realized that he himself had been a nuisance since he was young, but he realized that even if he did nothing, being the patriarch's son would still provide food and a beautiful life ahead. He laughed loudly at this, leaving people perplexed. The next day, the pool was ready. Hyun jumped into the water, causing gigantic waves that spread throughout the world. He also asked his guard to prepare a large stone ball to tie to his leg and start practicing. The man did as he asked, so after tying it to Hyun's leg, he threw the stone ball with all his strength, causing Hyun to be thrown into the air. Wasn't this pool supposed to be as shallow as a child's pool? Hyun looked like the Titanic sinking to the bottom of the lake. He wanted to practice internal energy, which would be more convenient for the water masters. To guard against this, his masters developed a method of internal energy training called the spiritual energy heart cultivation technique. Instead of channeling energy into the core, it would focus on the heart, not using energy veins, but blood vessels to transport energy according to practice. He finally succeeded in replacing internal energy. Internal energy training began to flow through the lake. He could feel the flow of water and control it to his advantage. Then he used the most powerful move of the Shaolin's strongest fist technique, the mystical fist of the 100 feet, which hit the water's surface, causing a terrible disturbance. After that, he continued frenetically underwater training with his previous knowledge, advancing rapidly. He could already master the technique in just 1 month. It was time to return. The first thing to do was to check how much weight he had lost, and he asked his vassal to prepare the scale. If even weight loss didn't work, how would he face his master this time? After much suspense, Hyun's gigantic weight had decreased a bit. This time the rope didn't even break like last time. He laughed wildly and with great happiness. His vassal admitted that he had doubted him a little at first. Now Hyun needed to get stronger quickly to be able to stop the Chaos Servant, so he ate everything in sight, then cultivated before the food was completely digested. He repeated this several times. Then 2 months passed. He was now at the bottom of the pool. Then he used the palm technique, causing the water on the surface to completely churn. The vassal couldn't believe what he saw, so he said, "How was that arrogant pig able to do that?" At this moment someone came up behind him asking who he was calling a pig. This was the patriarch, completely furious. He wanted to kill Hyun's vassal right then and there, but the patriarch's personal bodyguard ordered the soldiers to take Hyun's vassal away immediately. He didn't do this to arrest him. He wanted him to rest after all the effort he had made for the young master. The man cried with happiness. His father was very happy that his son had just sent water flying through the air using a palm martial art. His son had the supreme power of martial technique. Although he wanted Hyun to follow the academic path, he would still support him in his martial practice. Then his face became serious again. He ordered paper and ink to send a message to the palace. The next day his father gave him the divine manual of heaven, and Hyun had a serious face, because this was the manual that the emperor had granted. Clearly, his father was influential enough to get something like this. His father just said that he had recently mentioned to the emperor that his son had started practicing martial arts. So the emperor personally chose the best martial arts manual from the palace for him. Ha ha ha. Little did Hyun know what his father was capable of to get this. The old man sent letters every day to the emperor asking if the man had forgotten about him. He did all this just to win the emperor's heart by blackmailing. This seemed like a lover's tantrum, didn't it? On top of all this, his brother-in-law became his instructor and would personally teach him martial arts. His name was Dam Chunwoo, his older sister's husband. He even boasted that his martial arts school was the most famous in this province. Probably, this guy must be an apprentice compared to Hyun's true strength, but he couldn't show his true strength now, so he had to kneel and accept his brother-in-law as his master. His father was so moved, his eyes looked like a waterfall. How did his son become so polite as to spend so much time kneeling? But that was simply because he couldn't get up and needed his brother-in-law's help. In the following days, he followed his brother-in-law's training, but all this seemed like torture. The man would insult him and even called him a killer whale. Haya became furious and even dared to challenge his master, saying that he would prove that he already knows the basic principles of the technique. He thought it was just a joke, and he started laughing very loudly. But when Hyun ridiculed him asking if he was scared, he immediately agreed to the duel, and then sealed his internal energy to balance the battle. He still felt it wasn't enough, so he tied his own arms before the fight. Hyun activated his combat technique. This seemed strong and fast enough, but still slow due to the fat body. His brother-in-law was also surprised. How could he combine fighting techniques so naturally? Hyun's power had limits, so he had to win quickly. He easily knocked down his brother-in-law, who was now begging for mercy, but still got knocked out. Sometime later, he was so hurt that he couldn't even scratch himself. When he asked his wife and Hyun's sister to scratch his head for him, she was happy because Hyun was doing so well. She always thought Hyun was a martial genius. His sister couldn't contain her happiness. On another day, Hyun was just walking down the street. He had never seen people so happy before. There were merchants and also children playing everywhere, so he remembered the past where dead bodies were scattered everywhere. Everyone had to live with hunger and fear. The chaos servant destroyed everything he passed by and took away everyone's peace. But now when they saw Hyun, they ran to him full of admiration. Could the young master really be walking on his own legs? Everyone was completely amazed and soon gave him many gifts, even delicious food. He was just walking, but the citizens made him heavier and heavier. Their kindness was so great that he couldn't find a way to refuse. But he was more determined than ever to save this martial world. These good people here didn't deserve to die like this. At that moment, he realized that a martial arts master was watching him. The hidden martial master noticed that the fat man was looking back at him, but soon thought he was exaggerating. How could a fat man who did nothing notice him? But Hyun suddenly appeared behind the man wanting to talk. With the sudden scare, the man attacked with all his strength, Hyun flying off despite weighing tons. The man's strength was uncommon. Hyun fell unconscious from the impact force. Meanwhile, the man took advantage to flee. When he woke up, Hyun was furious, wanting to kill the man who hit him. The people around wanted to know if he was hurt, but he pretended not to care, only it was obvious that it hurt a lot. With this, he was even more determined to train to become more powerful. Meanwhile, his father and sister were discussing together. He wanted to propose a marriage so that Hyun would become a famous general, but it was too early. His son's change was certainly related to breaking off the engagement with Namgung's daughter, a girl who didn't want to marry since childhood, and wanted to forge her own path in martial arts. Hyun's father wanted to ask for the girl's hand again as soon as possible. The men from Namgung were already nearby. They were still thinking of a fair way to refuse young Hyun. Meanwhile, Hyun was heading to the martial beggars area to gather information about the virgin ginseng, but he searched for a long time and found nothing. A man explains that it's been over 20 years since the beggars disappeared from the area after the patriarch built houses for them. He also wanted to gather information about the state treasure. Who would know where the beggar would be living now? At the same time, Namgung's lord was in the provincial government area to investigate the records of Hyun on which a marriage proposal was made. The beggar says that Hyun is a special adoptive son, so he couldn't do business until he receives permission from the central beggar office. That's because the office classified Hyun as celestial level because he's the patriarch's son. Since the opponent was someone wealthy and powerful, Namgung immediately threw a stack of coins saying he would pay any price, but it still wasn't enough. That's because they can't override the beggar matrix order. Then he withdrew his ring, which was the emperor's seal. Whoever possessed this treasure would receive protection from the Namgung family. This was a treasure of inestimable value. At the same time, Hyun also arrived at the beggar's area, but this gang was too fancy to be called beggars. One of the guards outside even called him fat, telling him to leave because there was an important person here. But he didn't care and tried to enter directly since he was the patriarch's son. But he was hit by the guard in the face, and he was insulted. Hyun was really angry and ready to repay the humiliation the guard made him go through, but he'll repay in a punch this time. After Namgung gave his ring to the beggar, the beggar finally passed the information to the man about young Hyun. He was about to read it until suddenly a commotion started outside. Hyun was fighting against that guard. He had to admit that he underestimated the fat man. How could he move so fast even weighing hundreds of kilos? Hyun says he was using an infinite sky sword, but with his lower level ability, he couldn't do anything. Hyun just needed an apology, and he would forgive him, but the guy got even more irritated after Hyun insulted the Namgung clan. When Namgung's guard drew his sword to threaten him, Hyun defeated him instantly. All he heard was the guard's cry of pain from Namgung. Even so, Hyun raised the man again, saying he would educate him properly, began slapping the guard's face, until someone shouted from the sky to stop him. This person quickly landed among them. Hyun backed away, but the man didn't intend to let him escape. Hyun immediately realized that the man was a practitioner of a brutal martial art, so he had to stop him first. With the fat body, he couldn't directly confront the brutal style. The brutal style was a martial art that increased energy burst using rotation. Hyun wanted to use the opposite rotation to reverse it, but he realized that the one in front of him now was his master, and lost focus. This man was the sword master who taught him in his past life. Therefore, Hyun was familiar with these movements, but the end result was still being beaten. He thought the fat man wasn't someone so common, as he managed to disperse the power of the explosive lightning mystic fist. Hyun was trying to get up, his eyes gleaming with killing intent. The man noticed this, and started to move towards him, but the subordinates approached to protect him, and he ended up unconscious. This was ridiculous. The chief of the beggars division coming out of the building finally realized that the fat man in front of him was the patriarch's adoptive son, so he rushed to help, shouting, "Who dares to harm the chief's son like this?" People immediately looked at young Namgung with hatred, who seemed powerless.
Oh, shit!
He looked at his father. At that moment, he understood everything and tore up Hyun's information book. It was now useless, and he would have to face his father's wrath. If Namgung wasn't Hyun's future son-in-law, he would have been punished. The chief of the beggar gang division also knelt down to apologize, and things were escalating catastrophically. Then the beggar also conveyed to Namgung that he should kneel and apologize, as the man in front of him was respected even by an emperor. Seeing this, Namgung immediately feared and knelt to beg for mercy. But the father's anger was about to explode. Who dared to harm his favorite son? He would surely pay with his life. At that moment, Hyun walked out the door, but his appearance was a bit strange. It seems his sister forced him to do this hairstyle to look more handsome. The chief of the beggars division saw Hyun walking completely fine even after a punch from Namgung's son. Hyun went directly to meet the Namgung family head, greeting him, also telling Namgung's son that he himself was his uncle. Although he was only 17 years old, Hyun had been waiting for this day for a long time. That's because this guy was his master in his past life and slapped him several times. Although it hurt a lot, there was nothing Hyun could do at that time. He knew that in the future this man would become the Sword King, one of the 6 saints of the main sect. Now Hyun finally had the chance to get revenge by pinching his cheek and making the guy call him uncle. But of course, he was very happy to see this person. He was so happy that he started crying thinking he could now take revenge.
Why you bully me?
After that, everyone sat down to discuss, while Namgung still didn't know how to refuse the marriage contract. It was then that Hyun calmly refused this marriage, saying that he was busy training to save the world. The timing was not right for marriage. He even complained about the marriage contract being imposed by the previous promise without the consent of both parties. He knew that the time for marriage had not yet come. However, upon hearing this, the father was shocked. The martial arts world was full of bandits, thieves on the corners, mercenaries committing crimes, and he was clearly referring to Namgung and the beggar. They had to relent and remain silent. No one disagreed, so he got up and started to leave, saying that they considered the matter of marriage closed since both agreed. At that moment, he called the chief of the beggar gang, saying they would have to have a little chat. He wanted to get information about the virgin ginseng, know about the current state of martial arts, and the ancient masters of his lineage. He wanted revenge for what they did. He would make them go through everything he went through in his past life, and it would surely come at a price. His eyes became malicious when he realized it was time to accept a disciple. Then we returned to the pool. His vassal was asking him to return and rest in his room, but Hyun didn't seem to care much, until his beautiful sister along with her vassal arrived at the scene telling him to rest. Hyun's guard, seeing the wooden woman with his sister, became completely infatuated. The woman looks like a two-legged tractor. His sister, knowing that he intends to go to the Murim, asks if he forgot what happened to their mother. He knows she died because she had unfinished business in the Murim. Hyun just asks if she thinks he appears to be someone untrustworthy and weak like that. This caught her off guard. He asserted that nothing bad would happen again to their clan because he wouldn't allow it. His sister was very happy about this, saying he's no longer a child. With a wide smile on her face, she caressed our young fat master, saying he has grown quite a bit. Grown quite a bit sideways perhaps. Why was his lovely sister being so friendly with him? This was all very strange. Or was this what family should mean? After that, quite some time passed. The pool water stirred. As someone jumped from inside to outside, this person said that the time had finally come. The vassal rushed, asking his master to be careful. Will we finally see Hyun's transformation? Our protagonist turned into the flabby man.
Look at this dude. No.
Winter arrived and we returned to his father's palace, where the old man said he shouldn't go out there as he's too thin and might end up catching a gust of wind and flying away. But he would go anyway. This is because he needs to train Namgung's son. So he gets up saying he will visit his uncle in Anhui province and leaves. At this moment, he was in his room packing his clothes. He was happy to finally have freedom and wished to leave without anyone recognizing him. But little did he know, a large carriage was being prepared with over 20 guards. Outside it seemed like they were all gathered to leave, but all these people would be a nuisance for him. So he ended up having an idea. He called everyone to drink with him inside, saying they will only leave tomorrow. His sister was thinking of bidding farewell to her brother, until suddenly she heard her brother's voice and several other drunks. She decided to wait for him outside. At this moment, the guard was poisoned by Ken. Not with alcohol, but with a temporary substance that dispersed his internal energy. He probably won't be able to move until the next morning. This was a paralyzing poison that his doctor gave him as a protective measure. He was about to leave when his sister approached. She hugged him and asked him to take care of himself, not to take risks. If he felt too tired or afraid, he could come back anytime. She and her father would always be there waiting for him. So he took the best horse given by the emperor in the stables and set off on his journey. The next day he arrived at a small village, but people still thought he was a criminal, at least a chicken thief. He had to disguise himself as an officer sent by the Yu clan, saying he came here to look for something for his master's son. So he asked if they had noticed a stone emitting red light on this mountain, but they were confused. An old man told him that he had seen it several times while walking on the mountain at sunset. He said it looked like a red light reflected by the setting sun, shining like a red beam. Quickly he asked the man where this place was. The location inside the mountain was called Pagoda Mountain, and he advised him not to go there. It was the territory of the Nine Dragons clan, and they were not ordinary bandits. They were extremely cruel. This only made Hyun certain that this was the right place. So he asked the old man to guide him to the Nine Dragons clan. At first the old man was afraid, but upon seeing Hyun's pleading and almost crying look, he agreed. Thus, the two set off into the forest. In the end, they arrived there, but he couldn't put the life of the man who helped him in danger, so he asked for directions. The man pointed to the location. He also assured that the man would be well rewarded. At sunset, the red light shone. It was the virgin ginseng. He moved with all speed, crossing the stream. He thought about fighting underwater in case he was discovered. In this case, he had an advantage. Finally, he reached the Nine Dragons stronghold, but he didn't want to use force. So he began to spread his spiritual energy in search of the virgin ginseng, but instead of the item, he found a bandit beating a woman, and when the child started crying, the man began to go after her. For a moment, Hyun hesitated to save them, but soon he decided to intervene. In a split second, the man was already lifeless on the ground. Hyun hadn't intended to get involved, but upon seeing the little child with her mother, he decided he would help them until the end. After that, more guards started emerging from a nearby hut. Evidently, our protagonist of the loose skin put them all to sleep, After tossing them into a nearby cabin, he noticed there were several other citizens inside. At this point, he saw no other option but to help them too, but the people, being nervous, didn't seem very rational, so he decided to turn the child's mother into the leader who would guide the people. At this moment, a plan had already been orchestrated. When one of the guards entered the cabin to look for his men, he noticed that his men were on the floor sleeping soundly. Quickly deducing that it was those people who did this, when he thought to say something, it was already too late. The fat-skinned man hit his neck. Thus, the man went to sleep with his comrades. It was time to proceed with the plan. The objective was the main guard post. The fat man crossed the area in the blink of an eye. Quickly, he was under the guard post. In one hand, he held a torch. In the other hand, he was carrying a punch. Imbuing much mana in his attack, he struck with all his force against the guard post, where he literally knocked down the guard post with the man who was on guard. This guy didn't expect, ha ha ha. People were incredulous seeing this from afar, but soon they remembered that this would be the signal to proceed with the plan. Everyone should immediately evacuate and flee. It was also possible to see someone passing at an absurd speed. This was the dead-skinned man with a torch in hand. He came here to set fire to one of the cabins. His intention was to turn this place into hell now. In another nearby cabin, there were several bandits sleeping inside. Suddenly they woke up to a bright light. That was because several cabins were now on fire. The protagonist appeared at the door of their cabin, self-proclaiming himself as the arsonist, the skinny man with loose skin. He burned that cabin, also burned several others while running around trying to avoid many conflicts. Soon a group of bandits found him. His best option at this point was to run, but soon he was surrounded by another man. He easily dodged the attack and quickly knocked out the man. The loose-skinned man was unstoppable, like a lightning bolt falling from the sky. He crossed that village that night. There were 2 guards at the gate, who were soon attracted by a small thrown stone. When he bent down to pick it up, he noticed a bright flash behind him. Only then did the foolish guard realize that the place he was supposed to be guarding was now on fire, so they ran out desperately to try to help. At this moment, everyone lurking at the gate took the opportunity to flee. The girl's mother could only hope that the warrior and her savior would emerge alive from this confusion, so she ran with all her might towards freedom. Our loose-skinned lord was running with all his might through the village in an attempt to draw attention to himself, but soon his strength began to wane. It was only at this moment that he realized someone was by his side ready to strike. The man was fast enough to not give him a chance to dodge, hitting the loose-skinned man squarely, making him fly several meters. The rock asks who the intruder is, but as the loose-skinned lord didn't respond to his question, soon he was surrounded by various enemies who even began to ask if he wears bandages because he's ugly. Guards began arriving from all sides, and the last blow he received caused him a lot of damage. The rock orders his vassals to go put out the fire, while he tries to recruit the loose-skinned lord to his side. Gun sits down to gain time to recover his spiritual energy. At this moment, he sits down to catch his breath. Recruiting talents to work as bandits is harder than it seems. He thinks about it, but those who have strength and agility are very necessary. The leader of the bandits soon starts to wonder about the loose-skinned lord's behavior. Is he meditating excessively without caring about them? In a short time, he finally recovers. The spiritual energy becomes frightening, and then he asks, why would a wolf serve a mere puppy? The leader at that moment immediately orders his subordinates to advance to deal with him, as if they wanted to crush him to death. In just one blow, his mask falls off, and the men see that he is actually ugly because he's full of loose skin. The battle continues. Hyun is very fast, and although they are not strong, they cooperate harmoniously. Working together, they finally manage to reach the loose-skinned lord, hitting him and making him fall to the ground. Even a lone lion would fall before a large group of battle-hardened hyenas. Now realizing he has no options left, he decides to change his fighting style. He starts to become lighter and clumsier. Then he activates the immortal step of the 8 drunks to easily pass through the guards. Even the leader is surprised by the way he moves. He changes shape again. Using the shadowless flight technique, he moves as fast as lightning towards the leader. They exchange blows in a fraction of seconds, but Hyun knew it was superficial. The leader wouldn't die just from that. Now that his powers were exhausted, he could only fall directly off the cliff to escape. As he falls and thinks he's still no match for all of them, Hyun thinks he will come back to cut off all their heads. Then he disappears off the cliff, showing his middle finger.
Look at this dude. No.
This leaves the rock with an angry eye patch. He orders them to retrieve the loose-skinned lord's body from below the cliff, but soon one of his men arrives to give him a warning. It seems the people they were holding hostage have disappeared. This makes the bald man furious, wanting even more to eliminate the loose-skinned lord. At this moment, falling off the cliff, Hyun takes advantage of already being in hell to dive headfirst. His aim is to land as lightly as possible. He needs to land softly in the water. So he finally dives seeming like a screw. His fear is that he will hit the ground with the speed of the dive generated by the height of the fall. He finally manages to stop, but soon he started to be pulled downwards, and this time it wasn't because of his weight. Yet again he sank like the Titanic. After being pulled for a long time by the current, he ended up coming out in a cave on the other side. At this moment he just wanted to rest due to the gigantic exhaustion from the battle, when suddenly the energy of his heart began to react to something. His heart was ordering him to move forward to find it soon. He would find the virgin ginseng. After a while swimming through the cave, the loose-skinned man was startled by what he saw. What was in front of him was the virgin ginseng, a beautiful plant emanating aura. Hyun was so happy that he started to cry. At the same time, he remembered the beggar's words saying it would be easy to find the ginseng. Probably when he returns, he'll set fire to the beggar. Without wasting any more time, he goes to the ginseng, and he pulls it out of the ground with his hands. This was truly the legendary item called virgin ginseng, and it was now in his hands. He even looks around to see if this isn't a prank. Not even the servant of chaos could be faster than him to grab this item. As is still weighing 1,000 pounds, he devoured the ginseng with much happiness. Suddenly his spiritual energy started to rise. Feeling so much pleasure he couldn't stop eating that piece of plant. Sitting down to cultivate, the loose-skinned man was very happy. Now he would overcome everything and everyone. Returning to the village, Hyun's vassal was searching for information about his master who had passed by there, but since the loose-skinned man had falsified his name, the vassal couldn't find him. But he wasn't here because he wanted to, going back in time to the patriarch's mansion while he was sleeping. To his misfortune, at this moment someone entered through the door shouting. This person was the father of the former angry fat man. Realizing the vassal was sleeping, he starts hitting him saying he'll make him sleep forever now.
I understood that reference.
This is the reason the vassal is here in the village looking for Hyun. Sometime later he finds the fat man's horse and starts questioning the boy where the owner of this horse is while crying desperately. After learning that he went to Pagoda Mountain where many bandits live, he starts crying even more. Imagining that his master is being beaten by criminals, he runs desperately. Now in the middle of the frozen forest, it was raining heavily. The survivors of that village were running while searching for the nearest village. Someone was hidden behind a tree. This person was the guide who brought Hyun to this place and now was pointing the way to the village for them. The woman thanks the man's kindness. The old man asks if she saw a young man covered in bandages around. Of course, the man was talking about her savior, and she knew he had sacrificed himself staying behind with several mountain bandits. Now near a waterfall, the guards were furious because they couldn't find the loose-skinned man. When suddenly one of the bandits points to the waterfall, there was a man coming out of it saying he almost drowned to death. People didn't understand how this guy came out of the middle of the waterfall. The man, on the other hand, says they saved him time, since he was going to look for the bandits anyway. But the bandits had no idea who this man in front of them was now. Elegantly removing the hair from his eyes, he asks if the bandits weren't looking for him, but the men have no idea who he is, because Han's appearance has completely changed. I don't even know if I can continue calling him the loose-skinned man. Hyun at this moment orders them to take off their clothes and hand them over, as he is cold. As the bandits don't want to do that, he immediately kicks one of them in the head with great force, a force that knocks out his opponent with a single kick without even using mana. Everyone was impressed and trembling with fear, but Hyun was complaining that now his new clothes were very dirty, so he will need more clothes. He says this while looking at the guys shivering, knowing they will soon be without clothes. Finally, we have a decent and handsome protagonist. Next, they were all in their underwear and shivering. Hyun was feeling the weight of his new weapon. Suddenly, with a cold look on his face, he decided to test it. The men shivering didn't even realize what was about to happen. Then a head was removed from its body with great ease. Laughing at the situation, Hyun asks if they will just stand there waiting for their end. The men start begging for mercy, but Hyun just says he doesn't want to. He had promised to cut off everyone's heads. They all ran in terror, but now it was too late. They were all headless for this situation. Finally, the hunt had begun. Everyone under the mountain was subdued that day. No one escaped from Hyun's clutches. He even noticed that his new clothes were dirty again, so he decided to go to the riverbank to clean himself up, but was astonished to look at the reflection in the river. The loose-skinned man was now the male Barbie. At that moment, he realized that it was thanks to the ginseng virgin. For this reason, the bandits didn't recognize him. He was happy and embarrassed to have such a beautiful face. With this face, he doesn't even seem adopted, as he is as beautiful as his sister. but he is soon startled by screams. The noise came from the top of the mountain. At that spot, the old guide was being tortured by the bandits. All the survivors were captured again during the process. The guide didn't intend to give information about the loose-skinned man and was about to be whipped again. However, the man's attention was drawn to one of the other bandits. They were wondering why there was a man standing in the snow staring at them. At that moment, Hyun made a strange gesture while crouching in the snow. The bandits start to wonder if the man is scooping snow with his hand. Maybe he wants to play, but his throwing strength is like a bomb. He quickly knocks out several bandits just with snowballs. Anyone who dares to oppose him, he deals with them with lightning speed. The bandits could barely see him climbing up there. Then he came down, exploding everything. Those who didn't fall in this attack were soon decimated by the Moon Destroyer blow. Only one survived all this chaos. Hyun was asking if the man was afraid of him, but people couldn't even recognize him now. The old guy began to cough and groan due to the pain. Remembering the man's kindness and guiding him through the mountain, he became furious, asking if they did this. The young man started lying, saying it wasn't him, but with just a spear movement, the man had already been split in two. The survivors were begging for mercy from Hyun, but he wasn't there to hurt them, but to help the man who had shown him great kindness. The guide soon realized who was in front of him. Hyun tells the man to go back to the village. Realizing the man couldn't even speak, he began to infuse spiritual energy into his body and slowly burn to cauterize the wounds. It's not the best treatment, but it's what he could do at this moment. Hyun asks if anyone can carry the guide, then orders them to go towards the village without looking back, and so they do. At this moment, Hyun swears by the heavens that he will bring divine wrath upon the mountain bandits. The guards at the gate of the bandit village were wondering why it was lightning on a sunny day in the middle of winter. Suddenly, one of them was decapitated at a speed at which he didn't even realize he had died. The other was killed in the same blow. Hyun fills his lungs with air and shouts loudly for the bald man to come out of wherever he is and come to battle. He will have no mercy on any of these beasts. His intention is to cut and destroy anything that stands in his way. He slices the bandits as if cutting a loaf of bread to spread butter. Today, Hyun will eliminate this entire clan from the earth. He quickly cuts down several bandits at once, and with great ease, anyone who sees this scene could do nothing but tremble in fear, because soon their turn would also come. Suddenly, Hyun was almost hit by an arrow. The bald man's gang had arrived. But this is what our protagonist was waiting for. At this moment, he has to be more skillful than before. It's the right time. The familiar voice of the wild butler is heard. He brought men here to destroy the Dragon Clan's camp. The guards attack the bandits. The vassal's movements are not bad either. After all, he is a fighter. The bald leader calls his subordinates to fight. They are not afraid to fight, but the bald man decides to flee. How can he let this worm escape so easily? Incredulous that his pursuer is so persistent, he doesn't even recognize Hen's new look after plastic surgery. But when he sees the middle finger raise, the bald man remembers everything and becomes even more terrified. Now he is completely terrified. How is it possible that, in one night, he becomes so strong? He now sees Hen's immense power. He is truly a martial arts master. The only option is to kneel and beg for mercy. If Hyun wants any woman, food, or even gold, the bald man says he can provide. But when others ask for mercy, is it given to them? Hyun is punishing him today on behalf of the heavens, so he did what he came here to do. At this moment, the vassal appears, asking if he is okay, but he does not recognize the person in front of him as his young master. So he asked about Hyun, his young master, saying that his family is really a bunch of idiots and that the young master is as insolent as his father. He also talks about the young master's ugly appearance and his personality. He even says that not long ago he ate like an ox. Hyun at this moment was thinking of killing his vassal. After finding out that he is the young master, he completely changes his mind, saying that during the time they haven't seen each other, the young master has become very handsome. Then he says they need to go back or the patriarch will end up killing him. But Hyun hasn't finished dealing with the Chaos Master, so the vassal retrieves a divine whip he used when he was an inspector. Of course, Hyun doesn't intend to cooperate, so he tries to run, but is tied up by the butler. He is dragged back, on the way tries to strike the vassal who defends himself. This power of the young master surprises everyone. In just a few months, the young master has become so strong that he is having advantages against a former inspector. Hitting his defense, he makes the man be dragged back a few meters, but he is soon surprised by an attack from behind. The vassals cannot disobey the patriarch's order. The battle was about to reach its climax. Everyone was taking it very seriously. At this moment, the old guide arrives. He thanks Hyun for saving their lives and informs that the prisoners escaped safely. They are very grateful to him this time. He saved many people. While Hyun was distracted saying goodbye to the old guide, the vassal ties him up without him noticing and takes him away while he screams wildly. Then he is knocked out by the vassal to be carried more easily. The vassal also asks not to spread about the young master's deeds around. They should take advantage that he used a false name because a nail that stands out gets hammered, and that will attract evil people to Hyun. Sometime later we are shown the inside of the cave. The ginseng virgin is no longer there. The chaos servant was at the location looking for the item. He was so furious that the ginseng was stolen that he almost unintentionally killed all his vassals. So he ordered them to bring the thief to him as soon as possible and to kill all his relatives. He lost the item and now he's mad. Finders keepers, losers weepers. When Hyun finally woke up, he realized that he missed the chance to find the chaos servant in the ginseng cave. But when the second creature called the Millennium Snail appears, another opportunity will arise. Now they arrive at the city of Hefei. This was a gigantic and very charming city. Trade was very different from his hometown. There were also attractions for tourists. When Hyun got off the carriage, he realized that he was now in front of the Emperor's gate. When he tried to pass, he was stopped by the guards, but then someone ordered them to lower their weapons. This was ordered by his father, who was waiting for them there. Noticing his father's concern, he decided to reciprocate the affection the old man gives him so much, but he is ignored as he was not recognized. His father begins to beat the vassal, saying that he dared to lie in the letter. He says this because Hyun was supposed to be with the vassal, until the man being beaten says that the guy next to him is his dear son. He even takes a look at him, but goes back to beating the vassal, asking how can that handsome guy there be his son. Hyun then calls the old man father. The man recognizes the voice and asks if he is really his dear son. He still can't believe what he sees. The news quickly reached Namgung Castle. The squadron captain reports that it was told to the public that the old man's vassal who solved the problems, but in fact, it was Hyun himself alone who exterminated the entire clan. This leaves old Namgung impressed and interested, but still he asks if the captain's eyes were not deceiving him. The captain also says that to bring Hyun back, everyone had to work together to contain the boy's forces. Soon the patriarch of the family intervenes, saying that his son is very skeptical. Hyun is the future heir of a gigantic clan and was also born with martial arts, besides having lost weight and become a handsome young man in the process. To summarize what his son is doing now, it is to ignore the facts and believe in the rumors of the world. That's why he's skeptical. So the patriarch says that he will personally take care of marriage matters from now on. At this moment, we are already in a meeting between the patriarchs. Of course, Shinan is in the middle since he is the target of negotiations. Hyun's father says that he must take the martial arts exams, but Patriarch Namgung intervenes, saying that this type of training, regardless of how talented he is, will only be able to become a general. Hyun's father asks what he proposes then. The old man says that if he trains martial arts with a good master, he will surpass a general and even become a leader who saves the country and makes history. Hearing the phrase, "save the country," makes Hyun more excited. The amazed boy's father asks if there really is such a good master out there. Namgung says that they won't even need to look for one. He himself intends to teach the boy, a retired patriarch of the Namgung clan, the king's sword named Namgung Changshan. If you enjoyed the video, leave your like and don't forget to subscribe here. Until next time, bye bye.